Hello, my grots and gits. Welcome back to another episode of Happy Crumpin' Wargaming. We are talking about Calvary today. The Calvary that make me sad and want to cry, and the Calvary that fill me with rage and boundless energy to crump my foes into oblivion. So basically, this is not a fully comprehensive list of every single mounted option in the game, but we are talking about some of the Calvary that really disgust me and the Calvary that really disgust me. So get ready for the ride, everybody. Let's jump into it. If I miss anything, sorry, just put it down there. I can cover it later, or maybe I won't because I've had a lot of videos I'm pumping out. But I love it when you guys put it in the comments because I absolutely respect everything you guys put down there, except for the one guy who was memeing about Hello Pony. Anyway, Thunderwolf Cavalry. Guys, I desperately want to like the Thunderwolf Cavalry, but I don't. They're just not good. You get 3 for 100 or 6 for 200. The nice thing is they're really not that expensive. However, the points get a lot higher than that. Now, because they can have 2 leaders, and this is kind of cool, because you can grab a captain on Thunderwolf with them, or a battle leader on them, or you can replace the captain on Thunderwolf with, say, like Canis Wolfborn, or something like that. So that'll get them a +1 to advance and charge and a free CP usage, which is dope. Once per game, if you have the battle leader attached to them, they get to move D6 inches after being shot. This can put them in engagement range. Now, this is actually a really cool ability, but it sucks because it's a once per game ability. In all reality, there's no reason why the battle leader doesn't give them this every single turn. Like, they should be able to do this every single time they're shot, similarly to the way that Khorne Berserkers were last game. Or last edition. If they did this function, then honestly, these guys are pretty scary and pretty good. But it's once per game, which makes it kind of crappy. The battle leader will also give them lethal hits. Once again, a cool option. They'll have a +1 damage on the charge, and sadly, guys, it's just not enough. They have some piddling attacks. It's all going to be damage 1. They just don't slap, and that is a big problem. Then, if you want to stack the captain and the battle leader on them, honestly, you're looking at 395 points for a naked unit. No enhancements. They just suck. If I was going to do it, maybe I'd try it with Canis Wolfborn to get them sustained hits 1, and then they keep the lethal hits from the battle leader. And then maybe you have something that you can play with. But for a 400 point brick unit, they just don't cut it, guys. And it's sad because I love the Thunderwolf Cavalry. I think they're some of the coolest models that GW's ever made. Last edition, I thought that they were freaking awesome. I actually used them last edition, and some of the opponents I played against were using them quite a bit towards the end of last edition. So they were quite good. Now they're awful, and they make me want to cry. Let's talk about the Black Knights from Dark Angels. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Okay, so these guys were terrifying in Arcs of Omen because they were doing the advancing and still shooting their plasma that were overcharged. It was disgusting. However, now in 10th, a little less terrifying. So you can get 3 for 115 or 6 for 230. So they are not that expensive. Now, they do have a cool ability that when they charge, they get anti-monster/vehicle 4-up. The problem is that anti-monster vehicle 4-up is on AP2 damage 1 weapons, and there's only 3 attacks per model, and that just makes me so sad. So yep, that's not really a great option. Shooting's nothing really impressive. They do have a plasma gun, but it's not assault, so they can't advance and shoot it. It's only going to be Strength 7, AP2 damage 1, or Overcharge for Strength 8 damage 2. It just sucks. Because remember, that's hazardous, which means they're going to roll hazardous, roll awful. I don't think that we're going to see these guys on the tabletop at all. So this is number 2 for my heartbreak. Then, guys, we're going to the biggest heartbreak. And then, after this one, we're going to talk about the ones that are, like, exciting but not quite good. And then, lastly, we're going to get into the best 2 possible. The best possible. But this one is the biggest heartbreak of the edition, and it's very personal to me. It's the worst cavalry in the game. We have Virtus Praetors Custodes. I know they're not technically cavalry, but they're essentially cavalry for the Custodes. These boys, actually, they are mounted, though. So these boys, they're 180 points for 2. That's 90 points a model. So they went up in cost from 9th edition, and they went way down in power from 9th edition. So let me tell you what you get for 180 points. You get 2 models with 5 attacks each, Strength 7, AP2, damage 2 with Lance. Not too bad, actually. So 10 attacks with Lance. Movement 12, which is a downgrade from last edition. Last edition it was movement 14. T6, which is not great anymore. Wounds 4, so they lost a wound. 2 up armor save, 4 up invuln. The special rule that they get you allows you to advance over an enemy unit and roll 2 dice per Virtus Praetor in the unit. On a 2 up, you deal a mortal wound for each model in the Virtus Praetor's unit. This absolutely sucks because that means you're going to advance over a unit. You have to roll 4 dice off of your minimum size squad of 2, and maybe you cause 4 mortal wounds. But it's impossible to get these guys to advance and charge, and they don't have assault weapons, so you can't shoot afterwards either. So it's simply a movement phase to potentially put them in a bad position and potentially cause 4 mortal wounds. It is I'm not going to say it's the worst rule in the game. That belongs to the Admech army rule, which just doesn't work. But it's pretty dog awful. So in shooting, they get it at 1 attack. It's going to be Ballistic Skill 2. Strength 9, which is kind of cool. AP 2, and damage 3 shot. They get 1 of those. No access to rerolls. It sucks. And then you could also give them a Hurricane Bolter, which is 3 shots, Rapid Fire 3. 18 inches, so if you're within 9, then you get 6 shots. Twin Linked, though, strength 4, no AP, damage 1. Awful. The only possible way to use these guys is if you're also bringing a Custodes Bite Captain, who is putting your squad at a minimum cost of 325 points. And what that does, admittedly, is a cool ability. It means once per game, they get to do a normal move or a fallback move at the end of a fight phase, which means I could move them up. And then at the end of your fight phase, I can move them again. And then in my turn, I can move them. So they actually can go really fast, but that's only once per game. And it's 325 points for a terrible unit. It's just awful, and it really breaks my heart. Now, let's stop breaking hearts. Let's get into some of the cool things that have potential, but don't quite make it. And then we'll talk about the things that really rev my engines. All right, so moving on. We actually have Cerberus Raiders from Admech. Now, these are an honorable mention. This is a really big surprise to me because Admech are like really, really bad right now. But the Cerberus Raiders are actually pretty freaking cool. They're 3 for 75 points or 6 for 150. So they're actually very affordable. They're highly, highly mobile. They do literally 0 damage, but they're very, very mobile. So they get a Scout Inch move of 9, and then they have a 12-inch movement. The ability they have is whenever you move with the 9 of them, they get to roll a d6, and they get to move that many inches. If they're within 6 inches of friendly battle line troops, they just do a move a flat 6. That's actually very, very, very useful for getting early secondary points, for grabbing and blocking objectives off early, for move blocking the crap out of your opponent. And they're actually extremely useful. Now, the other Admech unit is the Sulphur Hounds, which are actually a little bit cheaper, and they do hit a little tiny bit, but they don't have the move blocking shenanigans. So Cerberus Raiders are actually a pretty decent unit. The reason why I wouldn't consider them good is because they're in Admech, and honestly, my heart goes out to all of you who are still trying to make Admech work. Okay, cool. Zangor Enlightens. This is one I'm really pumped up to think is actually usable this edition. These guys are actually kind of cool now. So 45 points for 3, 90 points for 6. That's awesome because it's very, very cheap. Now, you're almost always going to want to throw a Shaman in with them, and the Shaman is 60 points. So it does cause the cost to go up to a 150-point unit. But suddenly now you have 2 shots each, and they're hitting on 3s with lethal hits and precision. It's going to be Strength 5, AP 1, and Damage 2. So you're sniping characters fairly effectively with a range of 30 inches on those bows. That's actually not that bad. Then the Shaman himself actually has a little shooting as well. Then they actually get a little more tough than you would expect them to be, because they're going to be a toughness 4, 2 wounds each, a 5-up armor save, a 6-up invuln, and then a 5-up Feel No Pain when they're attached to the Shaman. These guys are pretty cool. You're never going to use these to be slapping through. What you're using these guys for is to position for early secondary points and to get angles and try to snipe out a little character, and then just be an overall annoying nuisance, and they're cheap enough to do it. And since you have that Shaman embedded in them, they're going to be generating Cabal points for you, which is very, very exciting. Okay, let's talk about the last usable unit, and then I'm going to talk about the bad boys, the boys who are actually going to crush souls, which I don't think many people were expecting me to talk about. Well, maybe one of them. All right, so this is the last of the usable guys who I think is almost good. These are Hellions. I absolutely can see these hitting the tabletop, although I don't think they're great. They are fast. They move 14 inches. There's not that many things in the game that move 14 inches right now. You get 5 of them for 110 points or 10 for 220 points. That is a little expensive. I think these models at 5 for 100 or 10 for 200 is a lot better sounding. Now, they do have access to the pain tokens, and the pain tokens is kind of what makes these guys function, giving them the full hit rerolls. They have a little bit of an annoying shooting, which basically will do nothing, but it's there. And then they have a rule called fallback, shoot, and charge. Now, I love fallback, shoot, and charge. I think it's one of the strongest rules in 10th edition, just because of how nerfed the combat rules are for actually maximizing your ability to get into combat. It allows you to reposition in combat. Unfortunately, the Hellions probably won't survive clapback, so if they charge something and they don't kill them, the likelihood that they'll be able to survive till the next turn to actually use fallback, shoot, and charge is pretty slim. Doesn't mean it's impossible, but I don't think it's going to come up that often for them. All right, now they actually do have fairly reasonable melee, because they're going to be sustained hits 1, so exploding on 6s. Weapon skill of a 3-up, strength 3, AP 1, damage 2. That damage 2 is a big deal. Now, I know strength 3. Yeah, but they have anti-infantry 3-up. Anti-infantry 3-up is really, really nice. And when you get the full rerolls to hits with them, suddenly you're fishing for 6s. That gets real spicy real fast. So let's look at how we do. We have an average total damage of 14.8 wounds into Terminators. So the average models killed for Terminators is you're going to be killing between 3 and 4 Terminators, which is actually not bad. Is it worth the points for the cost? I don't know. But they have other uses they can do because they're very, very fast, so they can be used for move blocking, secondaries, and all that stuff as well. Now, I don't know if we're going to see these hitting the top tier Dark Eldar list, but they are certainly usable now. Okay, now the time for the units that will be hitting tabletop, that will be crushing souls, and I'm super excited to talk about this unit right now because they're amazing, and they were not seen last edition at all. It is the Blood Crushers of Khorne. Listen, these armored titanic behemoths are going to stomp you into the ground. People are sleeping on these bad boys, and let me explain. Everyone's wrong, because they're freaking nasty right now. One of the big things that we have to talk about for these guys is in the context of the army that they're in. They're in demons. And in demons, if you're within the shadow of the warp, you can deep strike 6 inches away from your opponents. And these guys get +1 to charge, which essentially means they're guaranteed a deep strike charge, which is so freaking powerful. All right, now listen to this. 3 of them for 120 points or 6 for 240. So they're a little more pricey than some of the other mounts that we've seen, but they're a heck of a lot better. They'll get the +1 to charge, and they cause mortal wounds on the charge. So basically, you just roll 1 dice for every Blood Crusher in the unit. So if there's 6, you roll 6 of them. And every 4-up causes D3 mortal wounds. So on average, you're going to be causing 6 mortal wounds when you charge. That's pretty freaking good, actually. That's not bad at all. They have amazing synergy with demon strats. So for 1 CP, the demons can advance and charge. So let's say they were on the tabletop and you had to advance and charge instead of deep strike them in. Very, very useful. For 1 CP, you can re-roll saves of 1. So they have a 4-up invuln, and you get to re-roll 1s to save. That actually does make them quite tanky, because remember, these guys are also at a T7. T7 is a really good breaking point, okay? And they got 4 wounds each. They're not easy to chew through. Doesn't mean it's impossible, but they're not easy to chew through. All right, then you have a 1 CP 3-inch deep strike unit. Maybe not the most useful, but if you really have to get them somewhere, because they can't charge when you use that rule, then you can get them somewhere and stage them for another turn. And then for 1 CP, you can also add +1 to the AP of their weapons, which is actually really, really gross because their weapons are AP2. So suddenly their weapons are AP3. That is nice. And if the enemy unit is battle shocked, you get to reroll wound rolls. You can't rely on that, but it's a cool little bonus. All right. However, I haven't shown you guys the damage these guys do. Let's talk about damage, boys. Blood Crushers of Khorne, best in the game. Well, tied for best in the game right now, as far as mounted is concerned. I'm not saying they're the best units in the game, but for mounted, they're pretty freaking great. What we're going to do is we're going to add a Skullmaster. And this Skullmaster is going to add an extra 105 points to the unit, but he's going to add devastating wounds, and he's going to force enemies to take battle shock. So now we can start taking advantage of those, what do we call it? Of those wound rerolls that we get for the 1 CP stratagem that gives them AP and wound rerolls if the unit is battle shocked. Very, very exciting. Now, what is the actual attack profile of these Blood Crushers? Well, for the Riders, it's going to be 2 attacks each, weapon skill of 3 up, strength 5, AP 2, damage 2, but it's a lance, so they're +1 to wound. Strength 5 is a little low, but it's +1 to wound. Then their Blood Crushers, the beast themselves, will also be getting attacks 4, weapon skill 4, strength 6, AP 1, and damage 1. Not bad, but we're not quite done yet. Because remember, now we have a Skullmaster in them, so they're also getting devastating wounds. And hopefully, if we can get that stratagem to work correctly, if we battle shock our opponent, we can get reroll wound rolls against them. But we're not gonna rely on that. Now let's stack this a little bit further. Let's stack a Renmaster of Khorne in the army. And you want that Renmaster. Because now this boy is going to be pointing at an enemy unit and say, you, everyone who targets you, every Khorne unit in my army is going to be at +1 strength, +1 AP, and +1 damage when we attack you. This takes the Blood Crushers of Khorne to a massive attacks 2, weapon skill 3, AP 3, strength 6, damage 3 on the chart when they go in. And remember, that's Lance, so it's going to be +1 to wound at strength 6, which is nice. And then we go with AP and for the Skullmaster, he actually goes up to damage 4, which is pretty dang cool. That will also be applying to the Blood Crushers underneath them as well. Because suddenly they're at, instead of a strength 6, AP 1, damage 1, they're now going to be at strength 7, AP 2, damage 2. And if you use the CP on them for +1 AP, suddenly they're at strength 7, AP 3, damage 2. And remember, they're also going to be doing those mortal wounds on the charge. And all that's with devastating wounds, guys. All right, so on average, you have the Riders are going to be dealing 8 damage. And this is into Terminators here, okay? So they're going to be dealing 8 damage into Terminators. So it's going to be killing 2 to 3 Terminators. If you get lucky, you can kill 4. But the Blood Crushers themselves are going to be adding an extra 2 to 3 Terminators, which is pretty freaking awesome. And then if you have the Skullmaster in with them, that's going to be an extra 2 Terminators. So these guys can be crushing 7 to 8 Terminators on a charge. That is amazing, especially when you stack. That's not including the mortal wounds they do on the charge. And that's not including the fact that you can deep strike 6 inches away and be at +1 to charge with them. These guys are absolute beast mode, and they're going to be causing a lot of problems for a lot of people. Since thanks to the Lance, that does absolutely help to shrug off the fact that their strength is a little bit lower than I'd like to see it. I'd like to see their base strength 6 or 7, actually. But they have the Lance to kind of make up for it. These guys will absolutely crush a baby knight, no problem. And when they go into a big knight, they'll still be actually putting quite a big little impact into it. All right, cool. Because they're going to go, because you don't have invulns in melee for most of the knights. So those boys are going to get no armor saves against this. Dude, they're going to be crushing some big boys. And with a 6-inch deep strike, it's so easy to get them there. Now, this is tied for the best cavalry in the game. Now I'm going to talk to you about the one who I actually think is the best cavalry in the game. And some of you may have seen this coming, because we gon' to crump, boys! The Squig Hogs. Yeah, they're the best. They're freaking amazing. These guys are absolutely unbelievable. If you have not played against them, Godspeed when you do. And if you are using them, I love you. Let's crump harder, everyone. All right, so let me break this down for you. You have 3 for 110, or you have 6 for 220. They went up in points from last edition, and it's totally fine. Actually, I think they're fairly appropriately costed. I don't really think they need a raise, but for what they do, they're very valuable. All right, so chances are you're almost always going to be taking a unit of 6. And I do like these guys in units of 6. I don't really care for them in units of 3. Units of 6, and you're almost certainly going to be running the Knob with Smasha Squig as their leader, because you're going to give them Edwap as Kill Choppa, which we'll get into that combo in just a moment. This unit slaps and is very, 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 very tanky. All right. First off, their special rule. No modifiers to move, advance, or charge, so you cannot mess with their movement. The only exception to this would be like Spore Mines or the Night Spinner, who just says you cannot roll an advance roll. But it still won't mess with their actual movement. It'll just mess with their ability to advance and charge, say, if it's, say, the Wa turn. All right. Yeah, so that's actually a very, very, very strong rule. Then we're going to move to a different slide, because these chaps have a little bit more we need to talk about. Let's talk about their melee damage potential. Ignore their shooting, but they do have a tiny bit of shooting. They have a special rule called Bomb Squigs, which is a fan favorite returning from 9th edition. For every 3, you get 1 Bomb Squig. So in a unit of 6, we're going to get 2 different Bomb Squigs. Now, after a normal move, and that's sort of the key word, you have to actually make the normal move. Any unit that's within 12 inches, you get to roll 2 up, and they take D3 mortal wounds. You can throw both Bomb Squigs at once. That's totally fine, but they are 1 use each. So after a normal move, you can throw essentially more or less guarantee 2d3 mortal wounds on any target in the game. Lone Operative does not matter. Well, obviously because if you're within 12. Line of Sight does not matter. If it's a leader, it does not matter. This is amazing for sniping out those characters if you need to snipe out a gross character. It doesn't matter if you're engaged in combat. It just, you throw it at the unit, and on 2-ups, they take D3 mortal wounds. It's pretty freaking awesome. Now let's get into their melee damage. All melee is sustained hits 1 in the orcs in the current WoW tribe faction. So they have 3 attacks at a weapon skill of 3 up, strength 5, AP 1, damage 2. Now it is anti-vehicle monsters 4 up, which is very, very important. We like that a lot. And I do believe I forgot to type. Let me just make sure. Yeah. I just forgot to type a little bit in there. No big deal. Then when we're talking about the little hogs beneath them, actually, those little boys can freaking come to play as well because they're getting 3 attacks now. Now, they are hitting a little bit worse because they're going to be hitting on the 4-ups, but they also get a little bit more strength. So they're at the strength 6, AP 1, and still damage 2. So these guys are actually pumping out quite a bit of damage. Now, just making sure that you guys realize, because I forgot to put that in, so let me just type this in, because their sticka is actually lance as well. So they're also +1 to wound when they have that, which is a really big deal. Strength 5, +1 to wound on the charge. All right, now, when we have the Smash Knob, he's going to add +1 hit to the unit. So suddenly this unit is hitting a lot harder, because now they're hitting on 2s with exploding 6s, which means all the hits will hit. And these and the squigs themselves will be hitting on 3s. Then in the WA, remember it goes to 4 attacks each on the sticka and strength 6 on the sticka. Now, the extra attacks from the Squig Hog itself will not get an additional attack because you cannot modify the amount of attacks characteristics of an extra attack. However, they will get the strength, so they'll go up to strength 7 for the extra attacks, which is really, really nice. So these guys are suddenly slapping a lot. Now, let me show you the damage these dudes do. All right. But first off, let's talk about their toughness. And we're almost done, guys. Just stick with me so that you can just bask in the glory of these Squig Hogs. They are toughness 7. They've got 3 wounds each. They are 4-up armor, so I have a 5-up invuln when you're in the wall, and a 5-up feel no pain always. This is so tough. It makes them very hard to chew through, and it synergizes exceptionally well with some of the orc stratagems. For 1 CP, they can use Arda's Nails for -1 to wound. A T7 -1 to wound, 4-up armor, 5-up invuln, 5-up feel no pain is a nightmare to try to chew through. It is absolute beast mode. T7 -1 to wound. That is rough to break through. Exploding 5s. Yeah, I just missed this one too, so I'm just typing that in as well. Then the other one that you can do is you can do a 2 CP fight on death. If you're one, so I do a lot of Custodes as well. If you're one of my guys who's watching this for the Custodes content, check it out. These dudes, when they run in, yes, you're going to fight first and kill the unit, but they're going to fight on death, and they're still going to kill you back, which is crazy valuable for a melee army, right? Then lastly, they can do have a 1 CP to explode on 5-ups instead of 6s, which is, ooh, so much damage. All right, now let's into this Smash Knob here. I'm going to be pretty fast through this one. When he charges, he actually gets anti-monster and vehicle 3-up. And with Edwap's skill chopper, the enhancement, he gets devastating wounds, which means he's going to be causing mortals to all vehicles and monsters on a 3-up when he charges them at damage 2 each. These guys maul baby knights. These guys maul big knights, actually. In the WoW, this is dealing damage to a custodian guard. This is without the exploding 5s, but remember, you can give them exploding 5s. Just check these numbers out. All right. Average total damage, 10.6 with the stickas. So that's going to be killing anywhere between 2 and 3 custodian guards by itself. And remember, this is only exploding on 6s, it's not exploding on 5s. And then the Squig Hogs themselves, they're going to be killing another 1 to 2, so another 3 models dead. So basically right now we've got 5 to 6 custodian guard dead. And then the Smash of the Knob himself is going to come in and kill another custodian guard. So these guys are going to kill 6 to 7 custodian guards on the charge. That is not including the squig bombs they threw or any of the shooting they had. The fact that they can run in and just easily deal their points worth of damage, their PPP is amazing. They're going to run on in and they are going to kill at least their points value when they charge. And then it's hard to kill them back because they will be at T7 -1 to wound, 4-up armor, 5-up invuln, 5-up feel no pain. And if you can kill them back, let's say you use a fight first on them, they're going to fight on death. These dudes are undoubtedly amazing. They've got so much use in the game. I'm really excited about them. This was the Calvary video. I'm sure there are other Calvary units I didn't talk about that some people want to hear about. Put them down in the comments. I can get to them in another video. This is just the stuff that broke my heart, the stuff that I was excited to see, but they're just not quite good enough because of the army they're in or because of a little detail. And then the 2 units, which I absolutely freaking love, which is the Blood Crushers of Khorne and the Squig Hog Boys. These guys smack. And I hope y'all enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for the next one. If you wouldn't mind, share this with your friends because that's what really helps push the content. Anyway, have an amazing day, you wonderful crumpers. Until next time.